Linda lost her husband of 41 years in the spring of 2016. She did everything right. She chose a reputable funeral home. She paid for a proper burial. She picked out a headstone. She visited the grave every week for 2 years. And then she got a letter. The funeral home had made an error. There had been a mix-up in the preparation room. The man she buried, the man whose grave she had visited, whose headstone bore her husband's name, was not her husband. Her husband's remains had been released to another family. They had buried him too. Cases like Linda's are more common than the funeral industry wants to admit, and the legal, emotional, and practical consequences for the families involved are devastating in ways that no settlement check can fix. Today we're looking at body mix-up cases, how they happen, why they keep happening, and what the industry and regulators are doing about it. Spoiler, not enough. To understand how body mix-ups happen, you need to understand the preparation room. When a body arrives at a funeral home, it should be immediately tagged with identifying information: name, date of death, case number. This tag should stay with the body through every stage of preparation: embalming, dressing, casketing. In a busy funeral home, and many funeral homes handle multiple cases simultaneously, this identification chain can break down at any of several points. Bodies may be stored in a cooler together with inadequate labeling. Tags can fall off. In facilities with high volume and understaffed preparation rooms, the visual identification of bodies, rather than tag-based systems, can lead to errors. And here's the thing about visual identification. After death, and particularly after embalming, many bodies look significantly different from how they appeared in life. Family photos provided for reference may not match the post-mortem appearance of the body. Identifying one body among many in a cooler based on visual inspection alone is not a reliable system. Yet in many funeral homes, it remains the primary identification method. In 2011, a funeral home in North Carolina released the body of an elderly woman to the wrong family. Both families held funerals. Both families buried the wrong person. The error was discovered when one family noticed that the clothing their loved one had been dressed in, clothing they had specifically selected, was not present at the burial. Both families had to go through the process of exhumation and reburial. Both families had to be told that the person they thought they had laid to rest was, in fact, a stranger. In Georgia, in 2015, a funeral home mixed up 2 bodies with similar names. One family held a viewing and noticed immediately that the person in the casket was not their relative. But here is the detail that matters. The family had invited friends and relatives to the viewing. They had stood around an open casket looking at a stranger. They had touched the hands of a stranger, believing they were saying goodbye to their loved one. The psychological impact of that moment does not go away when the error is corrected. In 2011, an investigation at a veterans cemetery in Illinois found widespread problems with burial records, misidentified remains, and graves that did not contain who they were supposed to contain. The investigation found that the problems had existed for years. These are the cases we know about. Because body mix-ups are not subject to mandatory reporting in most states, the actual number of errors is unknown. What we do know is that the cases that come to light almost always do so by accident. A sharp-eyed family member, a concerned employee, a tip. When a body mix-up is discovered, families face a legal landscape that is, to put it charitably, inadequate. The law governing the mishandling of human remains varies dramatically by state. In some states, families can sue for negligent infliction of emotional distress. In others, the damages available are limited in ways that don't reflect the actual harm caused. Here's what legal experts in this area consistently say. No amount of money compensates for the experience of learning you didn't bury who you thought you buried. The grief process is fundamentally disrupted. Families describe having to grieve twice, having to reprocess the loss all over again after learning the truth. And in cases where the mix-up is not discovered for years, where a family has built their entire grief process around visiting a particular grave, talking to a particular urn, the damage is compounded by time. Some families have described choosing not to pursue the truth after suspicions arose because they couldn't face the possibility that their grief had been directed at the wrong person. That's what a body mix-up actually does to a family. A settlement doesn't fix that. The technology to prevent body mix-ups exists and is not expensive. Barcode wristbands, similar to hospital patient ID bands, can be placed on bodies at the time of death and scanned at every stage of the process. RFID tracking systems can provide real-time location data for remains within a facility. These systems exist. Some progressive funeral homes use them. They are not required anywhere in the United States. The funeral industry has resisted mandatory identification technology requirements on cost grounds. Consumer advocates have countered that the cost per case would be minimal and that the industry's profit margins are more than sufficient to absorb it. This argument has been going on for years. Meanwhile, families continue to bury the wrong people. I want to come back to Linda. After learning about the mix-up, Linda had to make a decision that no person should ever have to make. She had to decide whether to pursue the exhumation and reburial of her husband's actual remains or to leave things as they were. She chose to pursue it. The process took 8 months. It involved lawyers, courts, 2 funeral homes, 2 families, and a county medical examiner. At the end of it, Linda had her husband's actual remains. She had a corrected headstone. She had a settlement from the funeral home. And she had 2 years of grief that had been, in some sense, misdirected. She told a reporter that she didn't know how to feel about the grave she had visited for 2 years. She didn't know if it counted. She didn't know if the love she had brought to that grave had reached him somehow, or if it had just dissolved into the wrong ground. I don't know how to answer that question, but I know that it shouldn't have been asked. Next week on Coffin Ledger, the body broker industry. The largely legal, largely unregulated market for human tissue that operates in the shadows of the funeral industry, and the families who had no idea their loved ones were part of it. Subscribe. This industry has been in the dark too long. This is Coffin Ledger.